Good morning. I'm Pastor Lauren Michelle, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to Lafayette UMC this morning. A couple of housekeeping details. If you need a restroom, through the double doors in the back corner is another room, and there's a restroom located in there. And then also you'll hear us refer to the fellowship hall. That is through the double doors on that side into the next building. Also, if you have any questions or need anything, there are ushers in the back who are happy to help you. And then before we go ahead and start this morning, I would like to open us with a specific prayer. You may notice that our choir is back from our summer break, which I'm super excited about. But one of our choir members, Nancy Flood, is not here this morning. Unfortunately, Nancy fell this morning and is in the process of receiving medical care. And so I would just like to lift her up in prayer at this time. Gracious and loving God, we ask that you be with Nancy this morning and all of her care team, that you surround her with your love and strength and healing, that she would know that she is not alone, and that even in this time of difficulty and pain, that she would feel your love surrounding her. God, let her know that we are thinking about her and praying for her, and that she is so very loved. In your Son, Jesus Christ's precious name, amen. And now I'd like to invite up Judy Stoneman.
Good morning. Good morning. What a glorious day. I'm sorry for Nancy's falling, but we know that 911 is taking care of her. There are several announcements that I would like to make. Well, one of them is that Joe Easley's Bible study will continue after we have the potluck today, and after the potluck, it will continue about 15 minutes later after the potluck. The other thing that's really important to me is that you all have an insert in your bulletin, and it didn't say that I'm leading it, but I am. And it's going to be for 4 weeks, and it's going to be based on the book, The Unstuck Church, and it's a great book. Mark Logan and I have both read it, and it tells what to do when we want to grow and we are in a place where we haven't grown the way we want to. And so we want a group of people that will come and talk to us or brainstorm with us about how to make better and grow disciples for Christ. So if you want to do this, put your name on the bottom of it and get a book, or let me know that you need a book and I will get one for you. But we'd love to have anybody and everybody join us. It will be a really good meeting. It begins the 12th of September in the Magamy Lounge. And as I mentioned before, we do have fellowship time after service in the fellowship hall. And it's honoring our wonderful Lori Sullivan. And people have brought meals or potluck, and so it'll be a potluck lunch. Make sure that you come. It's going to be a joyous occasion, and we are going to celebrate Lori's wonderful ministry, and we thank her for that.
And now I invite you to stand as you are able for the call to worship, which is printed in your bulletin. Jesus said, "Love one another, even as I have loved you."
Love is more powerful than fear. It is mightier than hatred.
Let the love which God has lavished upon us be poured out to those in need.
Help us, O Lord, to witness to you by the ways in which we care for others.
Remind us, Lord, that we are called to be your disciples.
As we worship this morning, heal our hearts and spirits and prepare us for service. Amen.
Please remain standing, and In a minute, I'm going to ask you to pass the peace, but afterwards we're going to sing hymn number 57, which is "Oh, for 1,000 tongues to sing," verses 1, 2, 3, 5, and 6. The peace of Christ to you. Please greet those around you. This morning comes from Hebrews 13, 1 through 8, and 15 through 16. Let mutual affection continue. Do not neglect to show hospitality to strangers, for by doing that, some have entertained angels without knowing it. So I want you to pay really close attention to what the choir sings today. Remember those who are in prison, as though you were in prison with them. Those who are being tortured, as though yourselves were being tortured. Let marriage be held in honor by all, and let the marriage bed be kept undefiled. For God will judge the sexually immoral, and adulterers. Keep your lives free from the love of money, and be content with what you have. For he himself has said, I will never leave you or forsake you. So we can say with confidence, the Lord is my helper. I will not be afraid. What can anyone do to me? Remember your leaders, those who spoke the word of God to you. Consider the outcome of their way of life and imitate their faith. Jesus Christ is the same yesterday and today and forever. Through him, then, let us continually offer a sacrifice to praise to God. That is, the fruit of our lips will confess his name. Do not neglect to do good or to share what you have, for such sacrifices are pleasing to God. Please remain seated for singing the hymn number 2176 in the black hymnal, Make Me a Servant. This time, the choir is going to go ahead and take a seat so that they too will be able to see the slides. Scripture reading this morning comes from Philippians 2, 1 through 11. If then there is any comfort in Christ, any consolation from love, any partnership in the Spirit, any tender affection and sympathy, make my joy complete. Be of the same mind, having the same love, being in full accord and of one mind. Do nothing from selfish ambition or empty conceit, but in humility regard others as better than yourselves. Let each of you not look to your own interests, but to the interests of others. Let the same mind be in you that was in Christ Jesus, who, though he existed in the form of God, did not regard equality with God as something to be grasped, but emptied himself, taking the form of a slave, assuming human likeness, and being found in appearance as a human, he humbled himself and became obedient to the point of death, even death on a cross. Therefore, God exalted him even more highly and gave him the name that is above every other name, so that at the name given to Jesus, every knee should bend in heaven and on earth and under the earth, and every tongue should confess that Jesus Christ is Lord, to the glory of God the Father. The word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. This morning, we are lucky enough to have someone here that many of you know, but that I just recently met. We have Jim Straw's daughter, Becky Straw, who grew up in this church, and Becky will be sharing this morning's message about the Adventure Project. As you heard in Philippians this morning, we are called to a faith that is lived out, to look not to our own interests, but to the interests of others.
The work that the Adventure Project is doing and the way it teaches, equips, and empowers those in need is an example of what it can look like to live out that faith. And it is my honor to introduce Becky Straw, who will share more about all that they do.
You see, it's working? Thank you, everyone. I'm going to try and tag team so I can see what is up here while I'm talking. Hopefully there's not too much back. Never looking at go. So I said I'm Becky Straw, and this could go several ways because the last time I actually spoke in front of everyone, I had one less child. It's been that many years. And I got to see many of you at Papillon on Wednesday, or a few of you at Papillon on Wednesday. And I was there with our 2 kids and my dad, and we were, most of you were already in the back, but this one lady came to talk to us about, she was probably in her 80s or 90s, and she came up to talk about the kids and who we were, blah, blah, blah. And I had to ask her twice what she said, but she said, "Are you their grandmother?" And I was like, I feel that way. I don't know about you, but I feel like I've aged maybe 20 years in the last 2, because it has been a really, really long one, and a long time since I've been here. It is exhausting for many of you with the pandemic. I was telling my dad it's probably why you now have a CBD store next to Johnny Stoneman's. Just a really stressful, anxiety-producing time. So I'm on board with you. So I hope I can get through this fairly well. My hope is to leave you with more joy and more hope than when you arrived, because there's been a lot of good news happening. And I will say it's because of this church. As you're listening, I hope you see the values that I learned here transcribed in the work we do. So, for those that do not know me or have not met me, I'm Becky Straw. I grew up here with my parents, and I had so many fond memories of things that I did. I was talking with Judy. A lot of the formidable time here, learning about service and giving was from her and youth group, and Sue Renault, and Trick or Treat for UNICEF, and all those things. One story in particular, we were delivering apple pies, and the seniors delivered apple pies to senior shut-ins, and that was a really joyful time for me because I, for the first time, saw what giving something to someone for free to a stranger was so impactful and joy. On one man's face in particular, he came to the door in just his medical gown and had a home health aide, and was, we gave him the pie, and his face just totally lit up, and it was fantastic. And then when he turned around to wave goodbye, we realized he's only wearing his medical gown. I walked away thinking, that was really great. We made this person feel incredible, and I walked away with a really good story. You get to meet incredible people, and that led me to my life of social work and wanting to replicate that feeling we put in him into others effectively. So my dad's doing the slides here, so we'll go forward. You get to watch us try and work together here. But as I said, so I also grew up swimming here, which means I'm also very competitive. So I realized, okay, if I were to go into social justice work, I want to be the very best I can be. Ended up getting into Columbia, has a fantastic program for international development. I went there for my master's degree and then continued on to UNICEF, and then what became Charity Water, which is now the largest water and sanitation organization in the world. I was blessed to be the 3rd person on the team helping grow the organization. I would spend a third of my time in Africa just evaluating different water and sanitation projects, trying to figure out how do you get people lasting water and sanitation. And this is an image that we often see when we think of people in need of water, and this has been displayed all over the world, is that people desperately need clean water, which is very true. 1 in 10 people do not have clean water right now. But I think what we often forget to tell people is this image. And this image was taken in the same community a few feet away. I was there, this is in Uganda, and it actually is it's a broken well, and you can see the top is missing, the spout is missing, and so what often happens is aid workers and missionaries, local governments come in and they install expensive water systems and provide clean water. The average system costs anywhere from $5,000 to $20,000, depending on how deep you drill. And then most break within the first 2 years. And so unfortunately, anywhere between right now, 36% to some even say 60% of all wells in Africa are currently non-functional. It's between $300 to $400 million in broken parts that are littered throughout the continent. So you have people who are so overjoyed to at one time have clean water, now just going back. If you looked at that previous picture, those women were going back to the same source they had before to collect their drinking water, which is morally, a hard thing, because you had the best of intentions, and people who gave to those projects with the best of intentions, but were we really listening and really developing strong, capable programs alongside people? Or were we doing just what we felt like our heart should be telling us to do and giving generously? So, so that was, my first challenge was I'd go back to communities and I'd say, this has only been a few months or a few years, and how come this community now does not have clean water? And oftentimes the reason was there was no spare parts, there was no tools, and no trained mechanics. So nobody spent the time training anyone locally how to keep those wells working. There was no supply chain, there was no business infrastructure thinking about what are the financial mechanisms that's going to ensure that this community always has clean water. The second thing I kept coming to, and I always say this was like God speaking in my ear, is every country I'd go to, after a while there'd be one person brave enough to come up to me and say, thank you so much for this water if you're hiring. And that was really telling for me, is that somebody would say, and I remember this one man had this kid, and he was like, I just need to send my kids to school. And as a parent, you get it. The importance of a job is precious, it's priceless. It gives you purpose in your life. So during this time while I was at Charity Water, I connected with my friend Jody, who is our co-founder. She is a mom of 6 kids. I think I'm overwhelmed, and then I think about her. Like, you literally have twice as many. But she's the wife of a worship pastor, and her smallest 2 children were adopted from Sierra Leone. So she said when we adopted those twins, we realized we have to start thinking globally. Our family has to start thinking globally. How can we support people in Africa? So she actually became Charity Water's largest individual fundraiser. In her spare time, as a mom and a blogger, she was raising over $100,000 a year, just blogging and talking about the need for water for people in developing countries. I took her with me to Liberia to show her the work she made possible, and we got to talking about effectiveness and how come sometimes the most important work is the least funded and the least supported. And it's so easy to just take a picture of a well, show everybody that the water was flowing, and then walk away. So we thought, what if we created something radically different? An organization focused not only on helping people get clean water and health care and basic needs, but also one that left people stronger than before with access to jobs that are transforming lives in the community. So we called ourselves the Adventure Project because we're supporting ventures that are adding something positive to the world. I just brought this up. I was telling Laura and Michelle, I had to change my whole presentation because I haven't given it for 2 years. So I figured I'll add in new slides. This is actually a Time Magazine article from this week, if anyone's interested in reading it. But it is called The Movement of Effective Altruism, which is really interesting. It's something that I feel that we've been a part of for the last decade or two. The part that makes me giggle, the basic premise is the values that all lives are equal, and so we should be working as hard as we can to support that premise that every single life, no matter where they live, is equal, and we should be focused on using data to tell us how to help the most people possible in the most effective and urgent ways possible. What I find funny about this article, though, is that they tend to talk about the Bay Area rationalists and the Oxford philosophers who are designing this study, and that one of the things they've been focused on is asking people to give 10% of their wealth to charity. And I keep thinking, well, that's not really new. That's kind of Jesus. Like, they've got to, okay, it's great. But it's a really interesting article and very timely for what we're doing, which was we were really looking at, okay, what are the most effective ways that we can critically come into communities' lives? And so that is the next step. I'm just going to share quickly our four. So, really for us, it's targeting children in developing countries. Even before the pandemic, 1 in 3 parents lost a child before their child turned 5 years old. So when you think about that on a rapid scale of just how many children that is a phenomenal number of parents who lose their children from preventable illnesses. So these are things like lack of clean water, malaria, pneumonia. These are all situations that could have been prevented, and the cost to treat those children is what we say less than a cup of coffee. It's on average $2.40 to be able to provide those treatments to save the lives of those children. So how do you reach them effectively? So for us, it's really about, there are incredible local organizations in developing countries who have the tools and the skills and the means to do their jobs really well. They lack the funding and support to scale their enterprises to help more people. So our model is we collect donations from thousands of individuals. We always say you don't need to be Bill Gates to support really effective work. Now I'm going to start saying that you don't need to be an ex-wife of a tech entrepreneur to support really effective work. But, it's really true. It does not take much to influence a large number of people. So by supporting local organizations locally, we know that they are there on the ground. They speak the local language. They know the context in the communities well. And they are then training networks of people with job skills and training, supporting these entrepreneurs who end up going back to their communities with their new skills. Much like I mentioned, you need a well mechanic. How can you train that person with the skills so that they can have a good job? And then next slide. So this is what we say that we do best is like I said, I've been making Zoom presentations versus presentations with some of the fonts small. But our focus is really focusing locally. It's on creating deep and meaningful impact, and then how do we tell stories that resonate with people like you and build trust that your funding is going to the right people in the right places to do the most good. So I'm going to take you quickly through our portfolio. As I mentioned, we call ourselves the Adventure Project. We're almost like we consider a wealth management organization. Like if you were giving your money to be invested, you'd want it to go to the places that create the maximum impact. So we say the same thing as a charity. So we have our portfolio has 4 areas. The first is environment. I don't know if you can see, but this is actually the same woman in the before and after picture. She's using cooking over an open fire, which is extremely harmful to women's health. I say women loosely, but women are primarily the ones cooking, let's be honest. And 4 million women and children die each year from cooking over open fires because they're breathing about 2 packs of cigarettes of smoke every day from cooking those meals for their families. So you picture a mom, and the mom has a baby on her back. She's trying to cook a meal. That baby is breathing in that smoke. So the good news is the solution is an affordable, locally made stove. So that she's showing us the stove on the right. Picture it. You can see. Oh, I had some pictures too. So this is a woman cooking over what's considered a 3-stone fire. So you can see she has 3 stones, is what they say, and that's how she cooks her meals. Keep going. It's another one. It's very, very irritating. I was in this house and I couldn't even stand it in there for very long because my eyes were burning. Oh, that one's not going to work. Let's hope the next one does. All right, we lost it. Well, picture a beautiful picture of no smoke, and it is an incredible people love having a stove, not because it's helping their eyes at all, but because it saves them so much money. So the average person living in extreme poverty spends 50% of their income on the charcoal to cook with, because they need that. It's a necessity to be able to cook your food. Or some women spend up to 6 hours a day collecting that firewood so that they can cook. So they love it because it saves them so much time and money and cooks food faster. So the next Dad. So our next focus area is on health, and that's around helping with maternal mortality and child health care. So making sure that we are helping to save babies' lives. So most deaths that I mentioned happen under 5 years old. Half of those deaths happen within the first 30 days, which is pretty incredible if you think about it. What you really need is strong support and intervention of trained nurses and healthcare workers during that mom's pregnancy and also through those first 30 days. So you can go to the next thing. So what we've been helping is two organizations that are working to create jobs for healthcare workers. And these men and women learn essential healthcare. They're able to prescribe certain medicines like malaria meds or oral rehydration salts for children that are dehydrated. And what they've found is that just having a woman like Joy, this is Joy, in a village will reduce child mortality 27%, if nothing else, which is a really cost-effective way to help ensure that if there's a kid in your village that's sick, they can just walk to Joy's house. So Joy has over 60 products in her little bag that she takes around with her that she can help to treat moms and kids. One of these I just love talking about is this Mama Kit, which is right here. And this is actually, does anyone know what a Mama Kit is? This is the kit you take with you when you deliver your baby. So in Uganda, deliveries are free, but you have to bring your own medical equipment. So if you want to deliver your baby, you have to bring your own sheets and your own, there's string in there, there is disinfectant, gloves for the doctors, aren't provided their own gloves, and then a, it's not an X-Acto knife, it's a, yeah, a little bit like a scalpel. I don't even know what you call it. It's to cut the umbilical cord. So this is, otherwise you'll be turned away unless you have these materials with you. So this is an affordable, it's plastic sheets, and you just you can carry it with you when you deliver your baby. So I just wanted to include this because not all jobs we're creating are for women. We also have some men in the program as well, and this is Odembe, who is a fantastic healthcare worker I met in Kenya. And this mom had 3 miscarriages, and so she told us, or she told him, and then he translated to us. She said, if now I'm doing so well. I think she was 5 months at this time with her first child, and she said, if I deliver this baby and it's a boy, I'm going to name him Odembe. And I thought, well, that's so sweet. And I said, how do you feel about that? He goes, well, this would be the 3rd Odembe in the village. I thought that's sweet. He said, it's because I've been known to be the one to take the moms to the hospital if they need it. Sweet. You can turn the next slide. They live very far away from a clinic, and so he owns a bicycle, so he said he's transported at least 2 or 3 women to the hospital when I met him by bike, and I thought, well, that's one way to be in labor, isn't it? The back of the bike. That's been great. So hunger is another area we work with, irrigation primarily. So most farmers in developing countries, so Kenya, for example, 70% of Kenyans work as farmers. Yet most of those farmers, 95%, rely on rain to irrigate their crops, or they'll take a bucket and try and water with a bucket, which is very time-consuming, ineffective. Kenya has had 4 failed droughts, 4 failed rainy seasons, so it's a massive drought, the largest drought in 40 years right now. so unless you have an access to irrigation, it is very hard for you to water any of your crops. So most people in Kenya have ponds of water. They all just dig. One thing that's great about the continent actually is that there is a lot of groundwater, more groundwater in the continent of Africa than America actually. And so it's about accessing that groundwater. People dig little holes, water fills up, and so this is essentially a super soaker that helps you spray your plants and distribute that water. To put it in perspective, just having one of these irrigation pumps will increase your crop yield 400% in one harvest. So farmers move from making $150 a year to $850 a year, which I know that doesn't seem like much, but if you put it in American context, if you are making $15,000 a year in America with your family of 5, and you suddenly started making $85,000 a year for your family of 5, things will look a lot different. And so that has been such a great technology that's affordable for farmers. So we've been working with this local organization to just figure out how do you get this product into the hands of more farmers in need. Oh yes, so that's another shot of it. And lastly is water, as I mentioned. And I don't have time to talk about all the water programs we've supported, but I'll just share this one because I got these photos last month and I thought it was for sharing for some of them. So this is in northern Ghana, and it actually does not have a lot of groundwater in northern Ghana because it's near the Sahel. But what it does have is numerous ponds and lakes and swamps. And so this is traditionally where a lot of people are getting their water right now. And they're scooping it up. So this is a photo. This was the before that they sent me last month of where people were drinking from. And so we have been working with a local organization there to basically get these tanks installed and help train 3 women from each community to treat the water. And then by treating the water, go forward. Yeah, imagine doing this during COVID, but it's been wild. Next slide. So this is the before of what the water looks like and after. And so then these women are operating little water kiosks and they're selling the water in their community to people in need. So thanks to your support in the last 12 years, over 2,000 people now have a good job and are currently working in 6 countries in sub-Saharan Africa. These entrepreneurs are caring for over 2 million people every day. So I thought I'd mention what the pandemic was like. This is when you want to maybe visit the CBD store, but hopefully not. So, what has been encouraging, and this is, extreme poverty has been decreasing. I know there's always these mindsets of people that will say, oh, we can never end extreme poverty. But in actuality, poverty has been decreasing rapidly. Okay, let's do this. 1 second. Until COVID. So for the first time in 20 years, extreme poverty increased. It was people that were already living on the brink, and then unfortunately they were hit with many shocks. So there was a lot of, at least in Africa, most of the countries shut down their local markets and stalls. So what was extremely hard for people was if you were only earning, a little bit a day, you had no savings to live off of. So that's when things, and no support system and no government that was providing support. So it became very challenging. Go to the next slide. And then the current situation, as I touched on, there's now, because of the war in Ukraine, many of you probably know, much of the wheat has been stuck in that country. Ukraine's wheat is relied upon by about 37 countries for their food supply and for the World Food Program. The World Food Program is the largest supplier of wheat from Ukraine. So it has put an extreme burden on people there who were used to imports, combined with the food crisis because of the famine. As I mentioned, there's been a drought, and the worst drought in the last 40 years, and 4 failed rainy seasons. They think this fall might also be a failed rainy season based on predictions. So it's been extremely challenging in the Horn of Africa. But I think if I could speak, from our perspective, 10 years ago, 2 years ago, we were 10 years old, and I was thinking, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? We kept hearing reports, everything shut down, we can't do any more trainings, we can't do any more job creation activities. And for me, that I was going, oh gosh, how do we help? What do we do? Are we over? Because if we say we're creating jobs and then here we can't do any job trainings or any expansion or any work, and what ended up coming out of it is that every local organization we worked with ended up coming back to us and saying, you know what, we can't create any jobs right now, but we do actually need some PPE and gloves because the government has deemed us essential. And so, because of you, we pivoted. We said, okay, we're just going to put out some emails and say, this is an emergency. If anybody would like to give, we need PPE. And I'll say, I think the results were 99% of the workers in the jobs we created went to work. And they continued working through the pandemic. And that's just an incredible testament. And for me, this sounds so naive, but for 10 years I was like, I think this is the right thing to do. Creating jobs is the right thing to do, right? And then to realize that all of the work that we had been doing, that you had been doing and giving to, was essential, was pretty phenomenal. And yeah, like I said, it sounds so naive and cliche to say, but it was effective. It is effective. And people need healthcare and they need water, and they are getting it through a pandemic in a developing country with so many broken services. The water is still being turned on, and that kids are still getting access to the essential meds. So that has been really heartwarming to me. So in speaking where we are now, we've actually grown a little bit, and one of the blessings that's come out of the pandemic is we've hired some great and remarkable people. Touching on Michael, who's a Silicon Valley entrepreneur, Northwestern MBA, Duke alum, all of these things, and he said, I'm emailing you because, and I'm applying to work with you because I've been working Silicon Valley tech startups, and my mom died. And I just remember I was taking calls from the parking lot of the hospital, and I thought, this is not how I want to live my life. And I want to do something more meaningful. And so we have been blessed to get extraordinarily exceptional people working for us on solving these big challenges as a result of the pandemic, and how people have reacted and shifted their work cultures. Next slide. One of the things I'm most excited about, I mentioned we work through local organizations, is we've started a women's fund. And this stemmed out of the fact that we realized, there are incredible organizations out there that are female founded, and they just are not getting the same level of support as their male peers. It's kind of like if you were at a VC fund here and you hear about all of the incredible funding that's going to white men and maybe not hitting, female-founded companies here. So what we wanted to do, you can push the next slide, is make sure that we were giving women a chance to lead and help be the founders of these organizations and scale them at the same rate as male peers. I had mentioned this idea to a female founder of a jewelry store called Capper. They were a foundation giving about $10,000 a year to us, really generous. And I said, I have this idea. I don't know if other people will go for it, but what if we focused on making sure that women were part of the conversation, that if they were allowed to lead? And a month later, her team called me back and said, we're grateful that you want to do this. I know you were considering $10,000, but we were going to put in $500,000. I cried on that call too. I cry a lot now. Maybe I need CBD. But just a phenomenal testament, and that, restored our faith. With the pandemic, we lost a lot of corporate partners. That was one of the first things that a lot of corporations cut, was their giving and their philanthropic focus, because they were just trying to, rightfully so, save their own organizations. But what was a blessing is that her organization grew and expanded. And in actuality, last week, Garland helped me move some stuff into her old office space, because they still have a lease and they wanted to give it to us so that they are moving and growing into a new space. So that was really kind. So this last story, one of those entrepreneurs is Charlotte. If you follow us on email, you may have heard that she is one of our first female founders. Charlotte was orphaned at age 10. She grew up in the Crew slum, and at 16 she found herself pregnant. She had been raised by her older brothers when she was orphaned, and so she was suddenly trying to go to school full time and work full time. So, and with her baby, she tells the story of why she started Peru Stoves is that she also had an open fire in her dwelling, and she was quickly trying to wash up between going to school to get ready for work, and she didn't know that her neighbor had stopped watching her daughter, and so her daughter had waddled back into her house, and as she was warming up the water to put on her for her shower, the daughter fell into her fire. And her daughter burned a third of her body. Charlotte subsequently passed out, and both of them were taken to the hospital. Her daughter survived. Her daughter's okay. Does have some scarring on her legs, but it inspired her to think about how many children, are hurt. And during one of her classes, she learned about affordable cook stoves. And she thought, I wonder if I could make those in my slum, because we have so much trash that is collected here. And you can kind of insulate the inside with clay, and then the outside is metal. And so she said, we have a ton of scrap metal. I'm going to try and work with some women and see if we can make them. And she now, go to the next one. She now employs over 100 people. And this is her first factory. This factory produces 10,000 stoves a year, I believe. And it's really an incredible testament to, she trains women to sell them and people to make them. And then, welcome to my life. Just talk over them. And it's a phenomenal organization, still using recycled materials to make the tin. And we have been working with her to help her build her second factory in another district, another county. So targeting, basically replicating what she's doing in one county in another county to help target another low-income county that's desperately in need of clean cook stoves. This is a huge project. It is going to end up supplying not only clean cook stoves, but we're going to be working on ethanol production, which I don't know how much you know. I don't know much about it, but I do know it's the cleanest burning fuel source available. So this is going to be significantly reducing the climate impact of cooking. And it's going to be a really fun project because we're going to be working with local farmers to grow cassava, which they grow wildly, and then using the leaves of the cassava to turn into ethanol to produce a clean burning cook stove. So let's go to the next one. Yeah, then you can go to the next one. So these are the renderings. This is the foundation. This was, I think, 3 months ago, working on the foundation, and now we're helping. This is about a $500,000 project, and so we have about $100,000 left to help her get the roof and get that completed, which we think is going to be the end of January, beginning of February. But when this is complete, it is projected to create 350 new jobs and produce 100,000 clean stoves per year. So helping 100,000 families every year. Pretty remarkable. This was on the bulletin. This is a photo of Miracle. I was just about to say that children are miracles. And, they are. But if you go to the next slide. So Miracle's mom named her Miracle because she was told she wasn't able to have children. And so when she did, she was like, oh, I'm going to name this my Miracle. So Joy, who you remember from the earlier photo, Joy is her healthcare worker. So I wanted to make sure that you know that thank you. You are continuing to spread joy, continuing to help. And Joy is still working today. She was one of the first healthcare workers I met 12 years ago. When I had just met her, she had been living, her husband had passed away fighting in the Rwandan genocide. Ugandans came to Rwanda's help, leaving her with 3 kids and no job. She slept in a storage container for years until she heard about this program creating jobs and becoming healthcare workers. So she now has treated hundreds of children and kept hundreds of moms healthy because of her work. So thank you, thank you, thank you. You made that possible. I think when we reflect back on effective altruism and giving and how do you help the most people possible, I'm just so infinitely grateful for what this community has done to not only help me and this organization, but help raise me too. So, thank you.
I'm going to go ahead and invite the choir up. And while the choir is making their way forward, I just want to say thank you again, Becky, for coming and speaking and sharing such transformative stories with us. I really appreciate it. You'll hear a little bit more about this a little later, and I know many of you already support the Adventure Project, but if today you would like to make a donation to do so, if you write on the memo line of a check, Adventure Project, or on an envelope with cash inside, Adventure Project, we will make sure that the donations are able to go to Becky and the Adventure Project to continue the transformative and life-saving work that they are doing. And now the choir is going to sing Angels Unaware.